Oh, good people. I'm so excited today for this one. Actually, before we started recording, we were having a pretty concise conversation. And can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Oh, okay. We're having a pretty concise conversation. And I was speaking to you about how I got to first know you through Lead Young, Lead Strong that you did with Luke Corminer last year. And ever since I've been
Yes.
following you, and I'm so influenced where your leadership is concerned and how you posture yourself to be a leader and just the contributions that you make, especially to our generation. First and foremost, let me greet. Hello, how are you? I hope you're well.
I am well, and thank you so much, Lethabo, for this opportunity to just chat about leadership for a bit. I was a little bit surprised when I got the invitation from you, but I am really excited about what this conversation could bring.
Definitely. I'm also very excited as well. I'm really keen and looking forward to hear what you have to say. Firstly, I admire your leadership, and I'm sure there are others who will be watching this who will admire your leadership, or even others who don't know of you, but will know of you after this interview and be um, encapsulated just by the kind of person that you are. But the question that I have for you is in that, who has framed or contributed towards your leadership journey as a whole?
Wow, that's a great question, and the answer to that is not as simple as you may think. Too many people to name, actually. Too many people to name. I've taken leadership lessons from many people, many of whom the world may not have perceived to have been leaders, but I tend to gravitate towards servant leadership. And so there are many people who are not, I would say, in leadership positions, but I've learned a lot from them. And I think that the key thing in terms of those lessons was that it's not about you. So the leaders who operate from the perspective of putting their people first, those have been the most inspirational and educational types of leaders for me. People first.
Wow, putting people first. And I love how you started that off by saying servant leadership.
Yes.
Because today, what is perceived as leadership and influence is different from servant leadership. Can we speak about
Yeah.
servant leadership? What do you think it is? What does it mean to you? And when you look at a person, what would make you say, now this person is a servant leader?
Yeah, that's a great question. Again, servant leadership to me is, as I said before, it's when a leader decides that their people come first. In the world that we live in today, we tend to think of leaders as being up on a pedestal, separate and apart from the people that uh, they lead. And servant leadership is basically doing it the other way around. We are putting our people up on a pedestal. So we are making our decisions based on what is best for the people that we lead, what is best for our teams, what is best for our families. And it means sacrificing yourself in some instances. I think leadership is a very thankless job, at least true leadership is. In my previous work, I led a fairly large team, and I learned a lot in a very short space of time about what leadership actually is. And it's thankless and it's unforgiving. And to submit yourself to that in the cause of serving the people whom you lead is servant leadership. It's putting them above yourself. It's sacrificing yourself for the good of the team. It's making decisions for the good of the team, and paying the price come what may.
Wow, I love that. Putting yourself, putting others ahead of you, putting others before you, before your desire to pursue significance, before your influence, before, most importantly, your personal ambition. But
Yeah, of
I know that has to do really with the heart values and standards, because
course.
not many people could just wake up and say, I want to put other people before me. We're human beings, selfish by nature and by design in
Yes.
a way. So how do you
Yeah.
cultivate that? How do you cultivate those values?
So
It could
it's I'm going to just go straight ahead, and I'm sorry. I think there's a bit of a delay, so I may be speaking over you at some point, and I'm really sorry about that. For me, that experience that I had leading that team taught me, as I said, it was a very steep learning curve, a very difficult and emotional time, because I realized that it's very easy to think of things conceptually. So you are asking me the question of, how do you put the team first? What heart condition leads to that? But it really is a series of individual actions over time, right? It really is the small steps. So, for instance, a big one that I struggled with and still I'm coming to terms with and working on is the whole matter of taking offense and not taking things personally. I think that's one of the first lessons that a leader has to learn in order to be a good servant leader. Don't take it personally. Don't respond to the offense. Even if you feel offended, don't respond to the offense, because truly that is a distraction from what the team has been charged with, what the team is responsible for, what the team is doing. And that's just one of the ways in which the leader puts themselves second and steps back. Not being overly concerned about your reputation as a leader, but taking the hard steps in order to do what needs to be done. So a lot of times we become, really concerned about how we look and how we're perceived and how our leadership style is perceived. A true servant leader is not so concerned about that. They're actually concerned about the results. How important is what we're doing, So it's those little things that add up over time. And I think you have to come from a place of humility. And even if you don't, you will learn humility over time, or you should.
Definitely.
You have to come from a place that is humble, a humble place, in order to take that step back and to surrender your pride and your own personal ambitions in order for this team to do well.
I love that. Surrender your pride and your own selfish ambitions, or personal ambitions, I should say, to ensure that the team comes first and that you put the team first. That's amazing. You said something. You said not being so tied or entangled with how you look, but putting the actual results first. How did you develop that muscle? Because I mean,
I don't know if it's a very strong muscle.
Exactly. Being leaders, inevitably, you want to make sure you look presentable, or you want to make sure that what you're doing is at least perceived correctly. How do you
I think that the truth about who a person is and what they stand for always rises to the surface. I think that it always happens, whether it takes a couple of months, a couple of weeks, or many years. Who you are is revealed. Who you are at the very core is revealed. And so that's another positioning of the heart that you must take, which is to trust that by doing the right thing, and that by always doing the right thing, and that by acting with integrity, and that by putting others first and putting the needs of the team first, that eventually what you're doing and how you live will be there for everyone to see, and that your actions would defend themselves, right? And it's hard. It's very difficult, especially when criticism comes, when unfair criticism comes. There's always the natural compulsion. We are human beings to defend ourselves. But as I said before, the time that we take and the energy that it takes to constantly be on the defense, to be defending ourselves, is taking away from the work that we have to do. And so you trust that who you are and what you stand for will rise to the surface. And what I've found is that after a time, your team begins to know. I'm on a team right now with a very active servant leader. And there is criticism from time to time about this person, but his team knows. We know who he is. And I trust that whomever is following me would know who I am, even in the face of criticism, simply by how I've behaved over the years and what my actions are.
And his team knowing who he is, his character, his posture, and the fact that he personally produces as a whole for the team, it required for him to show results, track record, credibility.
Of course.
Therefore, he gains the trust and the respect of those in the organization or those in the team. Why do you think today, in this day and age, people gravitate to people, not everybody, but some or most people gravitate toward people that look like they have influence, but at the core, the influence is not transformational?
That's a really good question. We are attracted to pretty things as human beings. We like flowers. We like to cut them and we like to put them in vases and put them in our homes. We like attractive things. And so I think that all of us have fallen prey or fallen victim to something that looks good, but in the end is not as substantial as we thought that it would be, right? But I do want to say that as a former newscaster and as a person actively involved in communications, stagecraft is important. It is, I would say, equally important as content. Substance and stagecraft go hand in hand. You can have really good substance and no stagecraft, and no one ever hears your message because of how it comes across. And you can have the opposite, which is to be brilliant at putting on performances, so to speak, but the substance is completely lost, and so there's a reputation gap. People listen to you and then they go, okay, what was that? Looked really nice, but what was it? But when you combine these two things, as we've seen many leaders do in the past, as we've seen Barack Obama is excellent at it, the way in which he portrays himself, the way in which he brings his messages across. There's a lot of substance and there's stagecraft. And I think that when these two things are married, you get a really awesome result. And I think as a communicator now, speaking as a communicator, I think a main thing that many leaders, a mistake that they make is to neglect the stagecraft and to think that it's vanity, or to think that it's just superficial and everything else matters except for that. I think that history has proven that is a huge mistake to make. And so get some communicators on your side to help you out.
Yeah, that's very true. And you spoke about substance. So I'd like to know what contributes towards you maintaining the posture and position to say, no, I'm substantial in what I do because I've put in the work. What do you do to contribute towards your growth, your personal development, and just growing as a leader as well, where knowledge is concerned and insight?
That's a great question. I would say number one for me is reading. I read a lot, and every year that passes, I read more. I am always sort of blown away by and comforted by the fact that there is almost always more to be read. That there is infinite knowledge just available to us in books and in articles and in magazines or wherever they are, newspapers. There's just so much that we can take in. And there's so much that we can take in specifically tailored to what we want, right? Like I could find a book about anything. I could find a genre of fiction that I absolutely love and just stay there. I found an author last year. I read both fiction and nonfiction. I found an author last year, or I discovered him as in for the first time. He's been around for many, many decades. Ken Follett. He writes historical fiction, and he writes like these, epics of 1,000 pages each. And I read one of his books and I was completely blown away. And I was just so happy that I am now discovering his catalog. So I could have 20 books from him to read over the next 20 years. So reading is a big one. I think as well, because I consider myself to be an orator in training, someone who wants to do speaking, who does a lot of speaking, I listen to other speakers as well. I listen to orators. I listen to how they communicate their messages. I listen to how they conduct themselves in interviews. I think about what they did and what they could have done better. I think about the person asking the questions as well. So for me, I would say reading and listening to speakers has been big.
That's amazing. As we're about to wrap up, I'd like to ask you the question of, because in leadership, I believe in leadership, the concept and principle of, or let me say the principle and discipline of vision plays a massive role, because you have to be able to have foresight, and also just ensure that you have something that is driving your faith as a leader, because you've got to live by faith when you're leading people, when you're leading a team, when you're leading an organization. I even believe you've got to live by faith when you're doing this life thing, because
Sure.
Absolutely, the outcome is not guaranteed, but your faith guarantees the outcome. And how would you say faith has contributed and played a role in your life and in your journey as a leader?
Oh my. I mean, the whole idea, and you hinted at it, the whole idea of leadership is rooted in faith, right? Because leaders, as you said, need to have vision. I'm sure you know the saying, if you don't know where you're going, any road will take you there, right? And vision, even though it appears in the secular realm a lot, especially the word vision is a faith-oriented thing. Vision is believing without seeing. Vision is we are going there, even though we don't know that there exists. The leader is believing that there is a there, right?
Wow, that's
and so
good.
Yeah. And so leadership is faith-based. And so if you have a strong faith background, you are already at an advantage. You are already halfway there, because you believe it is in your DNA, it is in your biology, it is in your mind. You are well rehearsed in believing what cannot be seen so far. And so as a mother, I was thinking about this question. As a mother, I have vision for my children. I have a boy and a girl, 7 and almost 8 and 3. And I believe that my son will do well as a musician, as an entertainer. I believe that my daughter will do well as a leader. And so I say to my son all the time, I said, is that what I say to him, I speak to him in the language of this vision that I have for him. Is that what you're going to do as an entertainer? Is that how you're going to behave on stage? When people ask you to perform, what are you going to do? And my daughter, I say to her, is that the voice that you're going to speak to the nations with? Is that the tone that you'll use? And she's 3 years old.
Wow.
She's 3 years old, right?
That's amazing.
And I know that may come as a surprise to many people, because they may say the criticism of that is that you have to allow your children to be who they want to be. And I agree, but children especially, and this can be extrapolated to any type of person who is following a leader. For my children, I am their leader, and they frame who they are based on how I see them. So if I say to them, you are stupid, you are incapable, I don't think you'll be able to do that. That's what they believe. But if I create a world in which a frame that is huge for them, and I believe, I tell my daughter today, you're a giant. I tell my son today, you are a giant in this world. Then they begin to believe that they could be. Now, whether or not they want to be is up to them, but they could be.
They could.
That's up to me.
Possibility.
And so, yes. And so the leader is the person who says, you could be. This is what we could be. And so they make a choice of whether they want to and whether they have to, but they know that they could if they wanted.
Wow, I love it. That was a phenomenal way to close it. The could be, putting them within a framework, because that gives the leader enough insight already that you have to create the framework. You have to create the world in which you want to live in your mind, in your subconscious mind, in your heart first.
Exactly.
Any last words that you'd like to leave our community
with? Two last words for you. One is that I'm the product of leaders who saw what I could be. And I am a product that's still developing, obviously, but I've seen how it works. I've seen when a leader sees you as bigger than you are, and you begin to believe that. And so get around people who see a bigger version of you, a bigger self for you. And the second thing I wanted to say was that I'm extremely proud of you, Lethabo. I can't believe that you're 19 years old and you're doing this, and you're doing it on a global scale. I mean, we are thousands of miles apart. And I think that you are very good at what you do. And I can't wait to see what the future holds for you. So I just wanted to let you know that I'm proud of you and I see exactly what you could be.
Wow. Thank you so much, ma'am. I really appreciate it. May the good Lord bless you. And thank you for taking some time to come and kick it with us today.
Thank you.
Bless
Thank
you.
you.